Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, dear participants, and thank you for joining us in this webinar, which is on psychosocial support to teachers during this COVID-19. But before we start, as usual, we are kindly reminding you of some rules or some agreements, consisting of kindly asking you to mute your microphone if you are not speaking, also to switch off your videos. Also, I would like to inform you that the presentations as well as the recording will be shared, through your email and through our website, IGBA website. So, ladies and gentlemen, teaching and learning are greatly challenged during this unprecedented situation of COVID-19. Teachers have been impacted by the crisis, both professionally and personally. As countries plan to reopen schools, some of them have already reopened, the role of teachers, their knowledge of their learners' needs, and teaching expertise are critical to developing effective strategies. An area that needs particular attention is the fact that COVID-19 pandemic may result in psychological distress for teachers. The distress can stem from both the related health risk and the increased workload of teaching in new and challenging ways with inadequate training. This can lead to burnout, resulting in high rates of absenteeism, and can even lead some teachers to leave their job, unfortunately. Education responses to COVID-19 need to ensure teachers and education support staff receive ongoing psychosocial support. It is in that regard that the International Institute for Capacity Building of Africa, in IGBA, has planned to organize 2 webinars in English and French, respectively today, the 3rd of June, and next Wednesday, the 10th of June. This is with the view to reach as many countries as possible, as IGBA's mission is continental. In today's discussions, we have invited some experts from 3 countries who will share best practices and experience. But before introducing those experts from the 3 countries, I would like to welcome the Director of UNESCO Regional Office for Eastern Africa, Ms. Anne-Thérèse Ndongjata, who has made us the honor to accept our invitation to deliver a keynote speech. So, Director, if you, yes, I saw that you are around, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Yumiko. Thank you, Saliu. Let me appreciate all those who have taken time off their busy schedule to join this webinar. In fact, the subject, the topic is so crucial, to all of us, but more especially to teachers. And as I start, let me say, we will get some concrete examples of interventions from the experts. And therefore, let me keep my comments, my remarks to a very general level. And I believe, colleagues, when we talk about teachers, oftentimes, even before COVID, much of what we create are situations of discomfort, situations of uncertainty for teachers. We tend to demand so much from teachers and give so very little to teachers. And therefore, even before COVID, a question that always would be posed by teachers, whether aloud or quietly to themselves, is how worthy they are and how appreciated they are. And I must admit that generally, the reasons why we see strikes all over, especially in Francophone countries, although we are talking about Anglophone countries, but another way of really withdrawing by teachers is not just giving of their best. And so COVID-19 has really amplified the fact that this is one area that we must give attention to. And if you look at all of the responses so far, there hasn't been much talk about the teacher. It is only to really reach out to some of the teachers that are there and to engage them. I know generally we talk about other responses, and there has been, if I compare it to the health sector, you have in some countries where they're beginning to say, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, let's clap for the health sector workers, and etc. But in my own view, I don't believe that we have engaged teachers enough, and therefore the reason why I'm saying it's a very important topic that IGBA has chosen to really reflect upon, because the central question is, do we consider teachers worthy? And we never seem to realize it until when COVID-19 came. Because now parents who all along would criticize the teacher for one thing or the other have become overwhelmed. And they're beginning to appreciate the role that teachers bring to ensuring that their children learn. We cannot in any way begin to appreciate teachers until the crisis really set in. And when the crisis set in, it seemed as if we have put aside teachers. Yes, governments have worked with some teachers, but the majority of the teachers have not really been engaged in the way that would help them to feel worthy. Because when we talk about psychosocial, we are really looking at the emotions. And how do we build the emotions of teachers to enjoy their work and to really give of their best? It's first by recognizing the contribution they make. And secondly, it is not just by really criticizing them and giving them more work to do, or really continuing to speak of the professional development of teachers. What about the psychosocial development of teachers? And therefore, as I reflected last evening, I said to myself, I do not want to really dwell so much on a lot of issues, but to just pose the question, what are we going to do to consider teachers as worthy? The fact that when COVID-19 set in, it was clear that we were expecting of teachers what we have not given them. They were not given the tools, neither were they given the training in this type of situations. And I recall some time back when there's been a lot of clamor around one computer per child. Never even once did government consider one computer per teacher. And so in looking at the psychic, in looking at the support, we need to look at a range of support that would really comfort the teacher to consider himself or herself worthy. Yes, the frustration has been here. And as we look at really reopening of schools, it dawns on me that yes, we must reopen schools, but let's start with the teacher. By starting with the teacher, we are saying to the teacher, you are worthy, you are important, and we need your views. Hardly do we even spend time to begin to really interrogate what are the needs of teachers. Some of the teachers, they give so much, but their circumstances are so very poor. And therefore, I would be interested to understand what Uganda has done. Dr. Jane is there to really ensure that the teacher feels worthy. I would also like to hear from Dr. Therese, Professor Therese is not around, but I believe yes. We have Mary Wanjiru.
She is around now.
She's around now. My question, and if you are really going to really speak to it, how do you make the teacher feel worthy, to feel wanted during and after COVID-19? And let me really say that it's not always about salary. It's just about appreciation. It's about governments really going out there and talking about the teachers and appreciating them. It's about parents understanding that the role of the teacher cannot in any way be compared to any service that is provided, because the human capital is the most important to really nourish and develop if we're talking about development. And where we do not address these underlying needs and concerns, this is what leads to some really explosive reaction from teachers. I wouldn't say that as we talk about the students, we should not also be looking at the welfare, the health of the teachers. If teachers are to come back, what have we got in place to make sure that we guarantee their good health? Are we thinking of that? So the support has to really look at the professional aspect. What would the teacher need in order to feel worthy and fulfilled? In terms of the environment in the school, what protective measures would also be applied so that the teacher feels very comfortable? And thirdly, I would also say, in this period where we are looking at building back better, we must put the priority on how can we ensure that teacher is skilled enough to really feel very comfortable with digital solutions. And can I request that you all join me in this campaign to ensure that going forward, there should be no teacher without a device that caters for the professional exchange with the students, a device that also would help the teacher to be current and at all time, not only depend on the books that they have, but also are able to explore what's there on the internet. Let me not take too much of your time. I know I was given 15 minutes, but I have another webinar that I should share. So I leave you with a message that you must respond to how governments are making teachers feel worthy, because the psychosocial support really comes from the emotional dimension. How do they feel? Are we going to launch surveys to get some input from teachers on how probably we should respond better and differently? So let's prioritize the support that we'll give to them. And in terms of resources as well, can we ensure that this also is prioritized? Trying to really find out that those people that contribute so much to the human capital of the nation are themselves comfortable where they are. And then there is also the issue of their vulnerability. There are teachers who may be comfortable, but there may be teachers who really are struggling. How are we really addressing issues that would support teachers in terms of addressing their vulnerabilities? What risks are they really exposed to? And what sacrifices are they making? And do we acknowledge it? Let me close with that and just simply say, I know governments are doing very well. They do support teachers in terms of organizing competitions for teachers or recognizing best teachers. That's fine, but that would only touch one or two. Let's look at generally how teachers can really feel they are worthy. With that, let me close and allow you to get going. I will listen to a few of the remarks before I join the next webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director, for that very brilliant speech, okay, which is always appreciated. Worthiness and the role of teachers are actually really appreciated and recognized both by governments and communities, mostly in this time of crisis. But we need more when we know that teachers are one of the most important resources in the education system. Maybe we pray for your call to be heard so that no teachers can be held aside without device. So thank you very much, Director. Now I'm going to give the floor to the experts who come from the countries. Those are, in that order, Dr. Jane Egau Oku, Commissioner, Teacher, Instructor, Education and Training, Minister of Education and Sport in Uganda. We have from Cameroon, Professor Therese Muga Shalu Chombe, Emeritus Professor and Honorary Dean, University of Bio Faculty of Education, and UNESCO Chair for Special Needs Education. We also have Ms. Mary Wanjiru Kangete, Director of Education Programs at the Kenya National Commission for Education, for UNESCO, sorry. So they have made us the honor to come and share best practices and experience. So dear guests, you are most welcome. So now I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Jen Egaoku, who will share with us some practices. Unfortunately, she will be leaving us shortly because she has other commitments, but hopefully she'll be able to answer some questions. So please, participants, you are requested to post your questions in the chat box so that if we have some questions directed to Dr. Jen, we can convey them to her. Thank you very much. So Dr. Jen, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, moderator. Thank you all the participants for having this time. Jane Egaoko is my name, Uganda, and I'm going to share with you what we are doing for teachers. Just to give an introduction, again, I want to say we have 15 million learners affected as a country, and we have 538,000 teachers that we are talking about. All these learners and teachers are at home since the 20th of March 2020, and they are worried about the safety. Oh, no, sorry. And both the learners and the teachers are very anxious to get back to school. But parents and actually teachers, although they are anxious, they are also uncertain and skeptical. They are worried. 2 days ago, the president announced that we may open the candidate classes in July. So that now demands that we need to do a lot of preparation. That's just the background. What has been the effect of COVID-19? What has happened? My thing has gone off. The PowerPoint has gone off.
Can you help?
Can I just speak without it?
Yes, our IT colleagues will help display the presentation. I think he has it.
It's coming, Charlie.
Yes, it's coming. Yes, please, Jen. There it is.
Okay. So that was just introduction. Now we talk about the effect of COVID-19 on the teachers. Teachers are tired of being at home without work. Teachers are anxious to get back to work, but they are also scared, as I have already mentioned. They are worried about the safety of the schools and the learners. The teachers are worried of the syllabus coverage, given the time that they have lost. 3 months is almost the full term, and it has been a lot of time. Teachers are worried about the workload ahead of them because we are saying when you come back to school, we need to complete the syllabus. So that means they will have more work than they would have had under normal circumstances. They are worried. Some of them are worried because they might be jobless, especially those in private schools. Up to now, some schools have paid, some private schools have not paid, and there are those who have never had any money. Some have no salaries, and they are already extremely frustrated. Teachers are challenged by new teaching methods that are required. When they have been watching these TV and radio lessons going on, people are downloading things on the internet and what have you, some of them are not up to that, and they are worried of what is going to happen in the future. They are worried about their competence in ICT, and they are also worried about the new technologies that are now supposed to come on board. They are parents, and they are worried about their own children. Some of them are both the teacher and the parent. I mean, both the parent and the child don't have anything to do with what is happening now, and they are certainly worried. So there is need for psychosocial support. There is need for recognition of their challenges. That's the most important thing. Teachers sometimes feel that nobody recognizes that they have a challenge, just like Anne has said in her remarks. There is need for recognition of the challenges that the teachers are having. There is need for assurance. They are worried. They are not sure. They don't see themselves anywhere. And there's need to assure them of the support from government and from all the other stakeholders. There's need for clarity of the future of COVID-19. Some people think that it will end. Others are saying, no, it will not end. So the teachers are confused. They can't even plan because you don't know whether you are planning for an opening or you are planning for continuous learning or you are planning for a new mode of teaching. It's not clear. So they are worried. There's need for certainty of work and safety to enable them know that even when they are to open, they will be safe, or the learners will be safe, and they will be safe at their work. And there is need to prepare them to support the learners because they are the ones, once they're in school, the children are in their hands and the parents rely on them. So we need also to prepare them to support the learners when we open. Now, as we plan to open, what strategies do we have? One, we are saying we need to train in skills and knowledge for teaching in crisis situations. Many of these teachers have never seen a crisis situation. This is the first time. They are coming to a school where they are going to see children seated at a distance. They have been having 100 children in class. This time they will probably have 10 or 20. They have never got used to washing hands every other minute, being put on a temperature gun and this. So all these are new situations, and they are really scared, and so they need support. So we plan to train them in those skills and knowledge for teaching in crisis situations. There is the issue of providing a safe and supportive environment for their work. They are already scared, as I said. Will they be safe? What about the children that when they are moving from their homes to school, will they be safe? What about the children that come from their homes probably? Are they safe themselves? Will they make them safe? Will the school be a safe place? Will they be supported? All this is coming, but we plan to ensure that there is a safe and supportive environment for their work. In doing that, we plan to involve the teachers in the planning for reopening of schools. Actually, we have already started doing this. Just yesterday, we had a meeting with the Ugandan National Teachers Union, all the branches of the entire country. And I think it was a very helpful meeting. We are having another one tomorrow, on Friday, and then another one next week. So we are all together planning the reopening of schools. This, I want to assure you members, has really helped. The teachers initially, during the lockdown, they felt they were not anywhere in the system and they felt neglected. But the moment we started bringing them on board and having all these meetings with them, they are now very motivated, and they have come with very excellent ideas on how we can together open the schools. Then we need to plan, help, even be with them in the planning for the workload. I told you they are scared already, the workload that is ahead. But one thing I know is when you involve them in the planning and they agree what to do themselves, they will do it because they are motivated, they know they are part of the decision. Then we need, of course, to train them in the basic ICT and remote teaching and learning and learning skills and distance learning skills. That is critical, and Anne has just talked about that. Many of them don't have those skills and they are scared. We plan that even with the scheming and planning, and we've done this with the refugee camps. When we have had this experience of crisis situations, especially in our refugee camps. And what we have been doing there is, when, for example, you're planning to teach, you put them together. There are those who know and there are those who know, because we also have teachers who know what to do and teachers who don't know what to do in the refugee camp. So we normally put them together. In this situation that is coming, we are seeing the same thing. There will be teachers who know how to use ICT, those who don't know how to use ICT. They will have been affected at different levels. And so we plan that we'll put them together for professional support. We will promote co-teaching and team teaching so that they feel they support one another. We want to promote peer and social support among the teachers so that one is like an askari of the other. You keep knowing what the other is doing and how they are feeling, and you keep giving them the support. We want to create these WhatsApp platforms, group activities, and social interaction opportunities that help them to come together and support one another. But most important, we are planning to designate peer support focal points for them so that there is this teacher or there is this person that you can go to whenever you have any problem and you rely on them. This is very important because not everybody can do that. And so generally, finally, I just want to conclude that teachers are a critical force in preparation for resumption of normal schooling. They have been challenged under this crisis of COVID-19, and they need the support to enable effective recovery of the schooling system. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to share.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jen, for having shared the practical mechanism set in place in Uganda and for the concrete planning that is being operated in terms of the preparation of school reopening. And you have shared some experiences regarding the promotion of peer support among teachers and also support coming from focal points. I think these are very practical and concrete examples that can be shared among the countries. I don't know if Binyam, who is in charge of chairing moderating the chats, has some questions to Dr. Jen before she leaves.
Thank you very much, Saliu. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Probably one question that Sonia forwarded. She asked if we can get more information about the types of contracts where teachers are getting their salaries. And then there is another one. Somebody commented that giving teachers a device is indeed a good idea, but if you don't train teachers to use IT devices adequately, integrate it in their teaching, it's of no use. I know of many teachers who has been given laptops to work with, but it was put in the wardrobe as teachers didn't have the adequate knowledge to make optimal use of it. So your comments are welcome, Dr. Jen, with regard to these 2 points. Thank you. Over to you, Saliu.
Yes, thank you. So Dr. Jen, if you have some elements of responses, so yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to say that in terms of the contracts, first of all, the teachers, the government teachers are being paid. Those ones don't have any problem. The problem that we are having is in the private schools. Our permanent secretary wrote to the private schools to say that you made a contract with these teachers, and so you must pay them. But the argument that the owners of the schools are saying is also that the children went away before they paid fees, and therefore they don't have money to pay fees. But I think somehow a compromise has to be made that when schools open and children pay fees, then the teachers will be paid. So that's the negotiation that is going on. Our standing as government is that the teachers must be paid, and so they should be encouraged, because if you don't pay them and the schools open, then they will not also come back to school, and we'll have a challenge with who will teach those children. So that negotiation is going on, and we hope that the private schools will be able to pay the teachers. On the issue of devices, definitely we cannot give out devices without training. And that is why in our programming, we've now programmed to intensify the training of teachers even before we think about gadgets, to give them. But the training is on, and even the gadgets are planned, and we'll make sure that the gadgets that they get are not just put there for fun, but to be used. Thank you so much. And now I will
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
I just request that I leave for the next meeting, and if there are any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them maybe in the chat later on if I have opportunity to return.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much, Dr. Jen Ogao, for having given us some of your precious time. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Maybe we'll forward you some of the questions, okay, for necessary follow-up. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Now we give the floor to Professor Therese Munga-Shalo-Chombe. I think that she's with us. Professor Therese. And Professor Therese is Emeritus Professor and Honorary Dean of the University of Boer Faculty of Education and UNESCO Chair for Special Needs Education. So, Professor, you have the floor. Hello? Professor Therese? Your mic is muted. Can you unmute it, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Is my Is my slides on?
Look, can you display your slide, please?
Yes,
It's
it's
coming.
displaying. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to take the opportunity to thank IFA and those who've organized this very important meeting at this very critical time in all of our educational system. I'm so happy that the focus is on teachers who are really at the heart of our educational activities. And if we can recall, if we go back to Philip Combs' writings, I think it's in the early 1960s or so, who says that breakdown in any educational system has to look at the teacher factor, and that they are at the heart of any educational success. I'm not quoting directly. For this paper, I thought I would look at 8 points. And the 8 points are that I would situate the rationale for the problem that we are going to address. I would want to raise the issue concerning the implications, the psychosocial implications for reopening schools. Based on a need assessment study that we did on psychosocial support, we identified certain issues that I would like to share with you. We need to understand the concept and the related issues of psychosocial support by all educational stakeholders. Sometimes we pay lip services to these issues, and we need to understand them because they have many dimensions that must be addressed to give it its holistic impact. I would like also to suggest that in this discussion, we would look at the proposed principles of psychosocial support in education, and we propose a model by which we can use to put this in place. It is important also in these discussions to mention the role of government in promoting psychosocial well-being of teachers. Again, as I say, you begin to search in legislation to make it that evident. We would also want to look at government's inputs, what they put in, the expected outcomes for teacher psychosocial well-being. And we want to make this judgment based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because the teachers also have needs that must be addressed to enable them practice well, to make them know that they are safe, to make them know that they belong, to make them know that they are respected and they are loved. And so based on this, we've made some basic recommendations. So I would like to look at my slides now, basically to talk about the rationale and the problems of these of this paper. Now, in judging the rationales here, the COVID-19 has disrupted education. We all agree that is a very important issue, and that we've all identified the crisis and its impact in all of our educational system. And I think each government had taken different kinds of disposition, mainly to kind of shut down the school systems in order to contain it, and that children should be at home. And in Cameroon, this was done in 18th of March 2020, and all the schools were closed down. But to meet the demands that this closing down really means, is that teachers were supposed to revert to online teaching, to teach at distance. And so the major question, as it has been emerging from the discussions of Anne and Jane, is whether these teachers are prepared for online teaching, whether they have the capacity, whether they are computer literate, whether in these countries the internet is existing, whether the electricity is there most of the time. And so these are critical issues, and they pose challenges for the teachers. But before I continue, I'd like to draw your attention that Cameroon has been facing more than the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. There are separatist fighting going on, armed struggle going on in Cameroon, and the COVID has added to the many problems that our school systems have been suffering, and things that our teachers have also been struggling to engage with in terms of finding out how they could manage the school system. The next thing I want to talk about based on this is that the psychosocial implications for reopening school, which is what government is talking about now. Government is about reopening schools. And they are reopening schools, I think it was reopened on the 1st of June. And for Cameroon, it's only opened for those examination classes at the primary and secondary levels of education and universities. Now, this means that teachers will have a double charge. The challenge will be enormous because they have to provide classes, on-site classes for pupils and students who are in the examination classes. They have to provide online, struggle with the online and distance education for the rest of the pupils who are still at home. Teachers will therefore be faced with psychosocial problems. In terms of their health, they may have health risks. In terms of increased workload of teaching, and there are new and challenging ways which would make their training, which they received, to seem inadequate in this crisis situation. And more especially, the resources to accompany these challenges are not available. And even if the resources are there, their capacities are not well oriented towards managing this. These are great challenges for teachers. Hence, education response to COVID-19 needs to ensure teachers and teacher support staff to receive psychosocial support. These are critical issues which we must address. It is important because if these two categories of people are not really taken good care of, then it will be difficult for us to expect any success in our educational system at this given point in time when there is so much challenge. The issue here, I want to make reference to a needs assessment study on psychosocial support that we did in Cameroon in March 2020. We conducted this needs assessment research to find out how the schools and teachers are how psychosocial support is being addressed to schools, to teachers, and also to school administrators. And in this research, we observed that most of the teachers in the 23 schools that we examined seem to have a lot of problems. And the problems, first of all, is that some of them don't even understand the issue related to psychosocial support. And some of them feel that their schools have not been even given psychosocial support. And so from our study, from the quantitative results, we observed that 95.2% of our teachers, headmasters, and teachers are not aware of psychosocial support. But our qualitative findings tells us that there are problems. It highlighted the fact that there are psychological problems facing our teachers. Some of them are battered, some of them are depressed, some of them are faced with all types of emotions in terms of fear, anxiety, intimidation. Some of them have inadequate health and they lack safety measures. There is no incentive, which is problematic. And so we feel that all of this would impact, the teachers as such. It is important for to manage all of this by understanding the concept of psychosocial support, which I mentioned for all stakeholders. What is psychosocial development? That is something we must ask ourselves. It relates to our thoughts, our emotions, whatever. What are psychosocial needs? It depends on the things that will make us be able to cope with our environment and the challenges. What are psychosocial well-being? It's a situation in which people's basic social and emotional needs are satisfied or met. There are barriers to psychosocial well-being, which we all know, which this current times is challenging. And it means that we need psychosocial support. And we ask the question, what are psychosocial support? There are issues and things and situations that we have to put in place to enable teachers overcome certain difficulties, which Jane and Anne have mentioned. We need to put in place protective factors, which are issues coming from psychosocial support. We need to develop coping mechanisms that will help them to be able to cope, to minimize the stress and difficulties they face. We need to develop in them social resilience, emotional resilience, so that they can cope, because the challenges are enormous. Now, in Cameroon, we decided to propose the principles of psychosocial support in education, which would need, it's an implementation models. There we think we have to look at how comprehensive it should be, and that we should come from a holistic perspective. It should be enabling. It should be based on the rights of the teachers. It should be able to provide friendly environment for teachers. It should be positive. These are issues that we need to consider to be able to make our teachers more comfortable. And it's time our policy makers look at some of these issues and implement them. So at this point, we ask the role of government promoting psychosocial well-being for teachers. We are asking governments to, first of all, enable access to opportunities for help, to propose intellectual support for intellectual and physical stimulation to reduce attrition and absenteeism, to help them with their health situations and so forth. And so based on this, we decided to look at all of this based on Maslow's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And from there,
Professor Chombe,
yeah.
Professor, can you wrap up in 1 minute, please? In 1 minute, please.
Yes,
yeah.
I'm wrapping up. I'm saying that
Thank you very much.
Yes, look at Maslow's and all the rest. We are recommending here that there should be legislation for ensuring teachers receive appropriate psychosocial support to enhance professional engagement, create mechanisms for monitoring and evaluating psychosocial support and welfare, give them opportunities to develop computer literacy, and establish modalities for teachers' incentive. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share these experiences.
Thank you very much, Professor Chombe, for that presentation, which is very informative, and the information is based on concrete facts. As you said, there was a survey on needs assessments study regarding psychosocial support to teachers, and you have shared the findings. And yes, this really confirmed that teachers are at the heart of education system. Yet many of them are not prepared for some issues, for example, the use of ICT and distance education. Thank you very much. Probably participants will come up with some questions. I'm reminding them to post their questions in the chat room so that at the end, those questions are synthesized and conveyed to the different speakers. So thank you again, Professor. Now comes the time to give the floor to Ms. Mary Wanjiru Kangete, Director of Education Programs at Kenya National Commission for UNESCO. So Mary, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Saliu, for giving me the floor. I want to begin by appreciating the organization of this webinar, because it has actually provided, starting off with Jane, who provided the broader policy issues in regards to support, psychosocial support to teachers, then coming in to Professor, who has given us a research-based approach, and I will come in with a project management approach in my presentation, and I think this will help the participants to get a broader view of these issues. I want to share about psychosocial support for teachers from a Kenyan perspective, from my experience of working with teachers directly in previous crisis situations, and also implementing projects around COVID-19. I want to begin by stating that, so I want to begin by stating that Kenya, had its first case of COVID-19 announced on 13th March. After that, which was on 14th March, closure of schools and all learning institutions was announced. And from that time, over 3 million pre-primary children, 10 million primary school children, with 3 million secondary school students, over 500 teachers have been at home. There has been interventions to try and provide, remote learning, just like in any other in any other institutions. But we want to recognize, of course, that there are challenges that are there, and especially around the teachers trying to be able to manage that situation. Now, coming into the Kenyan situation, I want to say that even before COVID, and I think Anne alluded to this when she was making her remarks and stated that we had issues around teaching and teachers even before the COVID-19. And I want to give the situation of Kenya, where the government has been instituting key reforms in education. This pertains to moving towards competence-based learning, which calls for a whole change in our teaching and learning methodologies, the way we structure our books, interaction with learners. There has been quite some radical change, and teachers have been going through rigorous training, getting involved in developing teaching and learning materials, and that has got its strain on teachers. Then we have had changes in teacher management approaches, whereby teachers have had to be put on a performance contract. There is a lot that goes into that, including peer observation in terms of the way they present lessons, and there are some mandatory, requirements that they need to meet to be able to report on their performance to the employer, to the immediate supervisors, and even to the employer. We also cannot fail to recognize the higher teacher-pupil ratio that teachers have been grappling with. We have also been integrating ICT and training teachers on how to integrate ICT issues, not to mention the many emerging issues that keep coming up. Teachers have to be trained on how to handle issues of preventing violent extremism in learning institutions, issues of safety of learners, and many, many other emerging issues that we keep on asking teachers to be able to integrate within their learning. And then COVID-19 crisis sets in with its own challenges. And we see teachers expressing health concerns, expressing a lot of frustration, just like the previous speakers have said, in new modes of teaching, which they were not well equipped to be able to implement. Then we have teachers expressing limited capacities for working remotely, for supporting teachers, learners remotely. And we also have teachers also having challenges with managing, managing working from home, managing themselves, managing with their supervisors. I remember I am in a group where there are quite a number of supervisors or head teachers in learning institutions. Then they've been expressing issues with how teachers are engaging with their learners. And because the managers are also not well prepared for such a situation, they employ the ways of managing teachers that we use during normal times. And then there is a lot of pushing for more expectations from teachers. And you can see the frustration from both sides. And that creates an issue. The issues of job security, which I don't need to emphasize, I think the previous speakers have alluded to them. Participation of learners, and I have seen expression of frustration by teachers when they see that out of a whole classroom that they were supposed to offer, only maybe sometimes 30% or 40% of the students have been able to engage, maybe because of the challenges that the students are experiencing in trying to be able to engage with the platforms that have been provided. And also mobilizing parental guardian support. There has been systems for that when schools are running, but now things are different, and you find engaging parental and guardian support is taking a shift, and it's taking a tall order also on the teachers. Excuse me. Okay, then if I could talk about psychosocial support, and I'm going to talk about this from our experiences in working with teachers. One of the things that we have noted is that there are some basic principles that seem to guide effective provision of psychosocial intervention. One, they need to be framed within the broader view of a whole school approach, so that our interventions will not just be focusing on the teachers alone, but we focus on the teachers, we focus on the learner, and we adopt a whole school approach, so that then the teachers can, the kind of interventions that you give are supported by the whole system. They need to be founded on addressing risk factors and increasing protective factors. And I think the previous speaker has alluded to that. So we need to focus on reducing the risk factors, that is the factors that make, that can, affect or negatively affect the well-being of the learners. And we also increase the protective factors, that is the factors that will enhance the well-being of the learners. I'll talk about that later in my, the following slides. Then leveraging, then we also need to leverage on existing resources. Initially, I remember like 10 years ago when we talked about psychosocial support, in any situation, we were thinking of calling in psychologists and counselors to come and provide support. But I think over the years, there has been quite some development, and there is a lot of emphasis on leveraging on existing resources. Jane, when she was making her presentation, focused on, are there teachers who can be able to provide peer mentorship to other teachers? Are there teachers who can be able to provide empathy to the other teachers? Are there teachers who can be able to provide leadership in peer support groups? What are the existing resources within the frameworks that we are working with? And we work with those because that provides opportunities for more support. We need to develop perceived needs. And I think what I mean by this is that sometimes people will block their capacity to be able to express the need to receive support based on the kind of safety that they feel. And therefore, we need to create a safe environment for teachers to openly talk about their needs and to talk about the areas where they require support. Then clarity on coordination. If it is in a learning institution, who is coordinating this support to the teachers? If it is at the program level, how is this well designed in terms of who is coordinating the support that is given to the teachers? If it is at the national level, who is responsible and who is coordinating? And this ensures sustainability and ensures that we are able to build on the gains that have been made initially. And of course, we also need to develop partnerships at the community level with those people who are able to provide expert support, with those people who are able to provide, sometimes the support that the teachers will require, even material support, even, support in terms of giving them encouragement, enhancing the protective factors that I talked about. If I could go to the other one.
Mary, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, I'll be done by then. So
okay.
Why is psychosocial support for teachers? I think it's good to know the intention when we are working with teachers, whether it's at the school level or at the project level or at the national level, that we need to appreciate the effects on the crisis, on their well-being, to energize them, because so long as they have things that they are holding on, whether at personal or at the professional level, which are, exacerbating the risk, they take energy from them. We say that teachers cannot give what they don't have. So if they do not have emotional stability, they will not also be able to support the same amongst the teachers. We also need to help them. This also helps teachers to build team spirit. Finally, I want to say there are some things that we can do which are around the protective factors, what we can do in terms of helping teachers to be able to improve their well-being. One, support the teachers to adjust to the new routine. Sometimes it's just giving opportunities for them to share experiences. Sometimes it's just recognizing that there is a change in the routine, and that helps the teachers feel supported. We also need to provide social support. I think what Jane was saying in the, in her presentation, that we want to build opportunities for them to work collaboratively, and many other examples that she gave. Emotional self-regulation. through providing opportunities for debriefing sessions and also experience sharing on how they are dealing with the emotions that are coming up in this crisis situation, creating sense of achievement. And these are things that can be done very simply. What Anne was saying, opportunities to appreciate teachers and to tell them thank you. I have seen some WhatsApp messages going round telling teachers thank you. Fostering economic financial security. Coming up, I've seen some private schools coming up with programs that are actually towards promoting the financial well-being of the teachers and encouraging parents to be able to support, even in terms of finance. So just using very creative way to create the need for teachers, for parents to be able to support, and especially for private schools which are actually faced with financial challenges, and participation in physical activities. And teachers, even in a school, they can come up with an online system to just create opportunities for them to have physical well-being, to do like physical exercises together. And lastly, I want to say we also need to create optimism among teachers and create hope in such situations. As I come to the conclusion of my presentation, I want to say we also need to recognize that some teachers may require specialized support. And as such, there is need to build capacities for us to be able to identify teachers who require specialized support, and at the same time link them through referral systems to the right people or to the right institutions to offer the kind of support that they would require. And with that, I want to say thank you very much, and over to you, Salim.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Mary Kangate from NATCOM, National Commission for UNESCO in Kenya. Thank you for sharing some experiences from Kenya. And you have dealt with the key reforms in education prior to COVID-19 and also the situation when the COVID-19 broke out. And you have also shared some good principles for effective interventions regarding psychosocial supports. And also you have shared some good practices. Thank you very much. So now we have come to the end of the presentations from speakers. Now I'm going to give the floor to Binyam, who is moderating the chat, to see, I see that there are many questions, so please, Binyam, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Saliu. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can even see you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you for your attendance and active participation and your questions and comments in the chat room. There are several comments and questions, but depending on time, I'll first raise 4 points, and then I will give the opportunity for Mary and Professor Chumbe to comment. And then if we have time, I'll present another set of questions. The first question is from Risi, who is from ICBA. She wants to know how governments collect information from teachers. This is, I think, to understand the psychosocial circumstances of teachers. So one question we have is, how do governments collect those information from the teachers to understand their distress in their particular situation? And then the second question is, Mary wants to know how teachers are, receiving psychosocial support in a concrete way. She wanted to know a little bit more and some more examples, concrete examples, in what ways teachers are receiving these psychosocial supports. And then we have another third question from Abhishek Ram. They wanted to know, could you please talk about educators having to deal with the discrepancies in terms of discipline, studying, and norms, which students will display once schools are resumed following the confinement? So he or she wanted to know if how educators are dealing with these discrepancies. And for this time, probably a last set of questions is how there are two questions about whether the support includes staff working in private institutions, and how, in what ways, teachers in private schools receive psychosocial support. So these are 4 questions, and depending on time, I'll present another set later. Over to you, Saliu, and May and Professor Chombe. Thank you.
Yes. So Mary and Professor Chombe, do you have any reactions regarding the questions that are raised by Binyam from participants?
Can I go, Salim?
Yes, go ahead. Yes, please. Yes.
Okay, this is Mary. I want to respond to some of the issues that have been raised. I think one of them is how can we build, more concrete psychosocial intervention. I think from my experience, what I would say is that we need to have contingency plans for psychosocial interventions. But more often than not, from my experience, we usually think about psychosocial support when the crisis is already going. Therefore, we require very clear frameworks that point out very clearly that if a crisis happens, then this is the way we would move. But I can tell you from my experience, every time we find ourselves putting off the fire, most of the times we design, how we are going to intervene when the crisis is already ongoing. But I think as practitioners, researchers, and policymakers, we need to come together. And I think that is one opportunity that has been created by COVID-19, because we have come together as government and come up as actors and come up with COVID response proposals. And one of the strong proposals, like in the Kenyan COVID-19 response, is psychosocial intervention. And this is a one off. I have not seen us planning very concretely for this. And I believe as we go forward, working together and planning together, then that makes us be able to build better. I think there's somebody who is asking, how can we build better? I think it's for us to plan better. That is the way we can be able to build better. And I think also to create a lot of collaboration between the policymakers, the practitioners, and the researchers. This is something that has not happened very well. I know we have been trying to link so much, especially with the researchers, but I think this needs to happen more concretely. And that way, we are able to benefit from the knowledge that is being generated from the researchers, and the practitioners can be able to take it, and the policymakers can continue changing the policies so that even funding can be provided towards that direction. I think those are the comments I would want to make. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Professor Chombe, do you have any reaction regarding those questions? Hello, Professor, you can unmute your microphone.
I don't know why it keeps going off. Can you hear me now? It keeps going off.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you now. It's okay.
Yes. I said I'll take the first question you raised. How do government collect information from teachers? I think each country has a structure, a mechanism with which the central administration relates to the regional administration, going down to divisional and subdivisional, because they have educators, responsible educational administrators, who are supposed to do a situational analysis each time and having meetings with their teachers to find out the different challenges they face and report to government how best they can look for solutions, having discussed with the teachers. Because most often, like Mary said, the actual actors on the field are left out in the decision-making process. The prescriptions override the realities of the context. And because of that we don't get appropriate policy with good mechanisms to react to the problems that are facing the school systems. Most often also, the problem is that government focuses more on how teachers have taught to have good results, 100%, that's all. But the problems that the teachers are facing to get to the 100% have not been identified. Solutions to help the teachers cope with the challenges are not necessarily put in place. So it is important, like Mary said, there should be a coordination, a collaborative effort between the teachers, the policymakers, the inspectors and pedagogic inspectors, and the teachers, even the parents, to be able to sit together, identify the problems that the system itself poses, and how teachers are struggling to cope with it without the necessary skills and competencies. How best they can provide them with these skills and competencies, how best they can accompany them to support them to perform better in their professional situation and context. I feel that most often teachers are neglected, they are left alone. I don't know about this issue of psychosocial support, seems to me to be a new entrant, particularly in respect to teachers. Because we begin to ask ourselves, do teachers have incentives? Do they have letters of congratulations? What do they have medals and all of those things like people in other sectors in the public service receive? Just the letter of appreciation is enough to motivate any teacher. So for most of the time, you only have a letter of disciplinary and so forth. But what I'm trying to say is that the mechanism to touch base with the teachers are in place, but how that mechanism functions requires another text of application to ensure that the teachers are contacted, their problems are identified, and they are channeled to the right quarters for better solutions to be provided. And in this way, the teachers would be able to cope and to engage in their professional activities. When you are in a rural area with all the challenges, particularly now with COVID, now how does a teacher in that area come out to be there to support the children, particularly in rural areas in Cameroon where we have armed struggle and most of the children are out? The teachers are so afraid. Some of them have had all kinds of challenges. How would they come on board now? What is in place to help them? These are the issues, and I think government is looking at it. Our investigation of situational analysis gave us a clear picture of some of these issues, and there are other documentations to that effect. The other issue is that how do teachers receive psychosocial support? Well, I've never heard that teachers specifically receive psychosocial support, but I know that students and pupils, they have been receiving psychosocial support globally for the school system. But this issue, this discussion raises the point that the psychosocial support must be directed to the teachers as a team in the professional field, so that they can know that they are taken care of. There should be legislation. It should be in policy to decide on how psychosocial support should be defined in the context of teacher preparation, teacher professional practices, and so forth. And this should form part and parcel of their training, so that the teacher educators should also have an idea that this should be in place, so that the teachers themselves, as Anne said and Mary, they said, they should be able to have a community whereby they themselves can take care of their own problems, identify it, look for solutions, channel it to areas where solutions can be provided. The issue of education at this given point in time is going to be very critical, especially for us in Cameroon, where most teachers have never been there. They are not there. Most of them ran away because of the armed struggle. So in most of the Anglophone sectors, you don't know where the teachers are. They have to be called. You see them when they are coming in for salaries, and that's when you can get them together to try to see how you can address some of the issues. But now with this situation, the minister was in the air, motivating the teachers, providing all kinds of support to enable them come to school and to ensure them of the protective strategies that have been put in place, the issue of water, the issue of soap, the issue of sanitizers and all what it takes, the distancing with small class size, but we wonder whether we have the space for the small class size, because our class sizes are 80 plus, in some cases 100. And so how do the teachers, how will they manage this with the disciplines? But the important thing for Cameroon now is because it's only the examination classes that are coming on board. So when everybody else will be coming on board, that is a great challenge. And this discussion, perhaps governments will hear, they will definitely have to put in place a structure. The teachers will need staff rooms, well-equipped staff rooms, where they can sit and be able to work and prepare comfortably to teach, without which then we are wasting our time. And the issue of making them computer literate is a must. Each school, government should try to put in place structures where teachers can be trained, can have time to be educated to develop their computer skills, so that they can work also to be able to support themselves. With regards to the issue of providing psychosocial support for teachers in private institutions, first of all, government gives subvention. And at the schools themselves, they have their own mechanism for motivating their teachers. So, and they have short classes and so forth, and opportunities where they meet them, especially in the religious institutions. I would not say much for the, not the denominational, for the other types of institutions that are non-denominational, which is more an issue of economics, more than the issue of providing quality education. So these challenges exist. Now it's time to reflect. COVID is there for everybody else. Cameroon has its challenges with armed struggle. The challenges are many for our teachers. Our teachers need a lot of psychosocial support. And our program that we've proposed there, which I presented and didn't comment much, I feel that is something that we need to look at. We need to look at to be able to have orientations on how we can have a holistic approach where we look at issues. We have to have a comprehensive, and it should be done with the teachers themselves. Teachers should never be left out in the decision-making process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. So I don't know if Binyam has some other questions, but maybe I can add these questions that are very, very related. A question asking to make the difference between psychosocial support, motivation, and job satisfaction. And also another question asking what kind of incentives, financial, professional, I'm sorry, there's Indico. What kind of incentives, financial, professional recognition, and what kind of support do we need to make available for teachers? So the question of incentives and the question of motivation. So over to you, Binyam.
Thank you very much, Saliu. Yes, there are several questions in the chat room. Because of time, I just have to select a few of them. There is a question from Saip that teachers are most of the time absent or not consulted when school safety protocols are developed, and he wants to know how we can involve them. And under this particular case where they are, faced with stigmatization and other sorts of distress, how to involve them better in connection to school safety protocols. That's one question. The second question is about, this is both from Charles and Samuel. I wanted to know what support has been provided for teachers in marginalized, hard to reach, and refugee areas where they still face psychosocial related issues. They have been facing that, and under the new circumstance, it has been exacerbated. So they wanted to know what kind of support can be thought out for groups, for teachers who are teaching in refugee camps and who have special needs. And then there is also a question from Sonia. She wanted to know how many teachers have been identified and referred for specialized mental services. She wanted to know if there is already a capacity for such support, or if there is a need to build one. And finally, Yumiko also raised the question, is there a good mechanism to identify psychosocial needs of teachers? And she appreciates any concrete country examples. So I think it should be enough for now. I'll come back if there is time later on. Over to you, Saliu, and the presenters. Thank you.
Yes, I think this is a good number of relevant questions, okay, that needs to be addressed. And I'm asking Professor Chombe and Mary to give some answers. Professor or Mary, we have 9 minutes for that.
Okay, let me just raise just one or two issues. The issue of having teachers participate, my question is, are they consulted? You must be consulted to be able to participate. If you are not consulted, you will not be able to participate. So what we are saying here is that teachers must be consulted to enable their voices to be heard, which I think is very important. Teachers should be encouraged to engage in their own research in order to auto-evaluate their own situation. It's only through that we hear their voices, we can be able to identify what their problems are. That it's also a motivating force. When you are given the opportunity to identify, to talk about your problems, to provide, to suggest solutions, it is motivating. The issue of psychosocial, the issue of job satisfaction, well, I think we have the issues that have been raised by the presenters and others have already given an indicator, giving indicators of what would make teachers have job satisfaction. They want good salary. They want to be respected. They want to have dignity. They want to know that their profession is dignified. They want to know that all these are the case given the context within which they operate in schools. Most teachers don't have classrooms. They don't have blackboards. They don't have chalk. They come to school, they can't stay, they go out, you say the teachers, there's high rate of attrition, you don't know where to sit and prepare. It's not comfortable. So you need to look at some of these things that give them job satisfaction. And during this crisis period, how many of them have received letters of recommendation for those who've struggled? So it is an issue. The incentive may not necessarily be money. It could be material things that will motivate them to help their family, medical attention, or other issues that will put in place for them to have access to some of these psychosocial issues. Even in the school context, they don't have toilets for teachers. And so teachers who come to school and they'll go out to go somewhere to have some of these facilities. It's not kind. Then the other issue of how do you identify teachers who have been, challenged, stigmatized. Most teachers don't want to talk about it. In our situational analysis and our capacity building 2 weeks ago, when we were trying to talk about how we can put in place strategies for psychosocial support and how teachers can have the capacity to put this in place, we asked the teachers, why aren't you saying that you encounter these challenges, you have these problems? No, we don't want to. Even the delegates, the regional delegates say the teachers do not want to be identified because they feel that it may hamper them, hamper their family because we are living in a difficult situation. So I feel that this is some of my own observations. And in the marginalized area, I think government has its plans, which I think they will be releasing and which they are trying to release, because for us, some of the schools are non-existent and they are trying to refurbish and trying to retrain and review teacher education programs and opportunities to reach out to some of these marginalized areas and to try and enhance the teachers, give them seminars to build their capacities and so forth. In developing the capacity for headmasters and principals, it is to prepare them to be able to reach out to the marginalized areas where the teachers may not be able to come on board, but that they can be reached with all kinds of materials, even if it's written materials, it's handouts and explanations in the media, these issues are around for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much indeed for those answers. Now, Mary, you have 3 minutes to give your inputs regarding those questions.
Thank you, Sally. I want to speak to the issue of whether we have good practices for psychosocial support for teachers. And we have been having a program and we've been doing literature review on this area. And you find, I think it's Professor Shambu who talked about it, and the issue of providing psychosocial support to teachers is not really something that you find national interventions towards providing psychosocial support for teachers. But what you find are small, studies conducted on some specific areas. And I want to say, I think we can build on this because we have tools which can be customized even to be able to do this assessment on a national scale. It's just that we do not have good practices in terms of conducting this at a national level. The other thing that I would want to speak to is the issue of the vulnerable and those with special needs, those who the refugee settings. And I want to appreciate that actually this is one of the areas that there is very little interventions, and especially in regard to psychosocial support. But having said that, I also want to recognize that refugee settings, and especially in the Kenyan situation, provided actually some of the tools that we were able to use to be able to develop some national tools for psychosocial intervention, especially after the post-election violence. So I want to say that there are some selected tools that focus on how this can be done. There are some specialized attention that needs to be given, and especially when you are dealing with the learners with special needs. That is actually one of the areas that is least exploited. But in terms of refugee settings, you will find some tools, especially from the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies. But special needs is really an area that requires quite some attention. So thank you very much. I want to stop there. Over to you, Sally.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Ms. Mary Kangate. So now we have 5 minutes, and that's the time to give the floor to the director of IGBA, Dr. Yumiko Yokotaki, for her final remarks. So Yumiko, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Yumiko.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for this rich debate, and with a lot of educational reality in a COVID-19 closure in different countries. We heard from Uganda and Cameroon and Kenya, and each was coming into our hearts. Now, COVID-19, we are in the middle of it, and a lot of African countries, our country's number is actually growing, while in some other parts of the world, it is concluding. COVID-19 is a very political pandemic. Pandemic is by definition political, but this is really special one. And it is magnifying the existing challenges. We have seen it in the United States, police brutality, economic disparity, social discrimination, and racial issues. They were all magnified and then bringing violence and demonstrations and many issues. I become almost emotional thinking about that. Now, COVID-19 has also affected our teachers very negatively, but it is not starting with the COVID-19. These are the issues and the challenges we always had, but suddenly it has crystallized in front of our eyes. Teachers are frustrated and teachers are worried. Psychosocial support is needed for them. At the same time, when the schools reopen, those teachers are supposed to provide psychosocial support for their children. So we have to make sure that these teachers are well equipped for that. So in fact, it is a psychosocial support for teachers, but also a support for teachers to be a good carer of the students in psychosocial support. We have heard from Anne-Therese her passionate plea that teachers must be respected and professionalism has to be fostered, and that also they should be given a means to continue continuous learning during a school closure. And Uganda's explanation is also very vivid, that some teachers are even losing their income, but the government is doing its best to bring the justice. And then from Professor Chombe, we heard of reality in Cameroon, which is not only COVID, and then also theoretical issues for the Maslow's hierarchy. And then that fits in perfectly with the teachers. From Kenya, my sister Mary, she has provided us with a very good project and program support currently going on in Kenya, which is a very good example for other countries. We must have a teaching profession respected. We must have a teachers appreciated, recognized, and enough knowledge and the skills provided so that they can continue to provide teaching and learning. It is not only e-learning, but we can a lot of teachers are providing the learning through TV, radio, and low tech like WhatsApp or SMS and so on. We must think of these teachers, and I do believe as a ICBA, we would like to support these teachers, and also we would like to have our voice and also teachers' voices heard, that what heroic efforts they are making. And finally, ICBA is currently compiling a number of good resources for teachers to be able to use during the school closure and also at the time of our school reopening. And most of these resources are free. In fact, we will only share the resources which are free and relatively low bandwidth friendly. And also, we are currently working on a virtual campus where teachers can go and then do the courses with a certificate, as well as a resource platform where they can download. So psychosocial support could be part of it. We can have teachers share good examples and promising approaches from each other. After all, I think teachers learning from each other is the most powerful strategy. Thank you very much again for this excellent session. I think this is our first session where all the presenters are women, except the moderator, Saliu. So I hope you did not feel too lonely about it. Back to you, Saliu. Thank you very much. And thank you so much again for all the participants.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yumiko. Actually, the two moderators are men, the session moderator and the chat moderator.
Yes.
So really, it's 3:30 sharp. The 90 minutes that we were allocated are over. And I would like to add my voice to Yumiko's to thank all the participants who have really given us some of their time to attend this webinar. I particularly thank the Director of UNESCO Regional Office, Ms. Anne-Therese. Despite her busy schedule, she came. Dr. Jen Agau, Commissioner Teacher Education Instructor in Uganda, Professor Therese Munga Shalu Chombe from Cameroon, and Ms. Mary Wanjiru Kangete. Really, your participation was very much appreciated, and we are most grateful. Thank you very much. And once again, let me remind you that the presentations as well as the recording will be available on our website. I think our website, you all know it. It is www.igba.org. UNESCO.org. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues.
Also, the
Thank you very much.
French webinar will be taking place at the same time on the psychosocial.
Yeah, hold on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Lamin from Abuja. I was following.
Lamin, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Lamin.
Lamin.
Yes, how are you?
Yeah.
Hi,
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
Lamin.
very much. It is Philbert, Uganda.